Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Guys, welcome to yet another episode of The Marriage Conversation with Naima B. Robert. If you have not already subscribed, you know what to do. Just subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and make sure that you don't miss any of these amazing conversations, inshallah. I'm super excited about my guest today. It is Brother Gabriel Romaani, who is a positive Islamic psychologist. And we're going to be chopping it up about all things masculinity and, Seerah and history and feminism and all sorts of good stuff. So, Brother Gabriel, Jazakallah khairan for coming on the show. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
Okay, so I first came into contact with you and your work when you were having conversations about masculinity in Islam. Obviously there was a big brouhaha. Some things I agreed with, some things I didn't. But I am aware that there needs to be a conversation amongst Muslims about what masculinity really means, right? And what it means for us. Because I think we can all agree that the world that we live in today, masculinity is like a bad word, right? And masculinity equals toxicity for many people. So what would you say if somebody was to ask you, okay, what does it mean to be a man in Islam? What is Islamic masculinity? What would your response be?
Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, jazakallah khair for hosting me on your podcast. May Allah bless it.
Ameen.
I think there's two elements to anything that defines Bani Adam, or the sons and daughters of Adam, right? Number one is their physiology, their DNA, what they are as a human being. And number two, so you can say maybe the hardware, okay? And then the operating system, okay? And when we look at the hardware, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created every single person, okay? لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. And many of the scholars use this evidence so that mankind has been created in the best mold, the best way, right? To the point where one of the imams, was composing some poetry about his wife, and he said that if you're not more beautiful than the moon, I'll divorce you. And then he realized, oh my God, maybe I said something wrong. So then he went to the imam, and the imam gave him this ayah that لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ. Ahsan is the best. Okay. So actually, there's no better creation than human beings. Okay. And that is why we are carrying what we are carrying, this amana. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us in this way, but so there's the fitrah. Okay, that's what we call the fitrah, the natural state of a human being, the uncorrupted human nature. All right, so specifically when it comes to masculinity, all males have been created in a specific way. They have they're hardwired to be men. Right? So that's something Allah has given us as a gift. Everyone, Muslim, Kafir, meaning Muslim, non-Muslim, Chinese, Indian, white, black, everyone's got this same pretty much DNA. There's a few small differences in our, in certain things when you look at the genetics, but we're basically on the same, genome, the same type. However, when it comes to the software, this is what's called the operating system of human beings. How do human beings behave? How should a man behave? What's his way? How does he feed that fitrah, the natural disposition, so that it's protected and it grows and it's used in the right sense, in the right way? All right. So, and this is what we call wahi, or revelation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator, the one who created the hardware, has also sent the operating system with it. All right. If one of the two gets corrupted, it doesn't work well. So for us to understand what is a man, or what's masculinity from an Islamic perspective, we really need to look at the revelation, the theory, and put it together with the pragmatic applications of human beings, what they are biologically speaking, and protect those two, and then we get what is a real man. And the easiest way to understand that is, again, through knowledge and understanding of who the prophets were, because they were the best representation of men. Okay, the the highlight, you can say, the superstars of masculinity were the prophets. And of course, according to the strongest opinion, there's a slight difference of opinion that can be refuted. This is not because I want to refute it. This is just amongst the scholars. All prophets and messengers were men, okay, males, okay, and as Allah says in the Quran, all right. So we look at them, and that's where we understand what is real masculinity. What does it mean to be a man? And specifically to the last prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that he is the example to be followed. We look at his life. So I would be very subjective in telling you what I think a man would be if I wouldn't use evidence and I wouldn't try to take that back to the Quran and Sunnah. So that's basically what I think it's important for us to start from the beginning, to define the parameters that we're going to be discussing in and the evidence. Because yes, there's a lot of opinions about a man should be or a man should be. We have the very popular opinion of the non-Muslims, and you have the opinions of others as well. So that's what I would like to lay out as the beginning and the foundation of this discussion, inshallah.
Now, I think it's a really important point. I love the that analogy of a hardware and a software, right? It's almost like the nature and the nurture, isn't it? That conversation about how much of who we are is a product of our environment and our conditioning, and how much of it is actually biological, hardwired into us. And, when we look at the Prophet ﷺ, and the companions, as a whole, and we look at them through the lens of masculine behavior, and how they showed up as men within their families, within their peer group, within the society, I always find it very interesting how multifaceted the Prophet ﷺ himself was already, but also all the companions, because you see the Prophet ﷺ, you see him exhibiting what one would call traditional or even stereotypical masculine roles. I'm saying in quotes, guys, okay? But being a leader, making decisions, not being afraid to do what is necessary, not being afraid to sacrifice, speaking the truth in spite of the blame of the people, okay? Being courageous, being brave, being strong, right? And leading and punishing and doing all of that good stuff, right? That is typically what we would say is sort of masculine behavior. And then you also see that very same person submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and submitting with a soft heart. And so I want to look at sort of how he was in the society, and then I look at how he was with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the companions and all of them. May Allah be pleased with them. But this ability of Islam, and I see it in Islam specifically, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but Islam seems to give a man permission to be a wakil, to be a wali, to be amir, to have ghaira, to fight, to defend, to lead, to make things happen, but also to cry before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also to be humble before his Lord, to also love his wives and his children, to be sweet with them, to be kind, to be generous, which typically a lot of the conversations about masculinity is that, no, that's not male behavior. You're not a real man if you cry, for example. Right. What do you think about that? I mean, do you think I'm way off with that? Or do you think that is that's quite accurate?
Again, that's a very good point. And saying that there's almost like two extremes when you're talking about masculinity. You have the ones who are saying everything is toxic. If a man has muscles, or he's daring, or he's brave, or he's assertive, that this is toxic, this is not good for society. Right. Yet when a woman does that, they're like, she's a bad whatever, she's a wow,
that's true. Wow, that's very true. But I have my thoughts on that. Yes, exactly. SubhanAllah.
Right. And then you have the other side of, like, I think almost like a reactionary movement to the other side. And they're saying, look, real men don't cry, real men don't have emotions, or they don't show emotion, a lot of stoicism and so on. Again, I would like to bring us to what I've just said, the way I laid out the foundation of the discussion. We need to analyze for the Muslims anyway, for this discussion is mostly for Muslims. It's okay if non-Muslims listen as well, of course, no doubt. Yeah. But this is for the Muslims. So for the Muslims, a Muslim claims that, okay, we go based on evidence, right? It is an evidence-based way of life, a deen. It's an evidence-based deen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأْتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring your proof if you are truthful, right? So these are fundamentals in our deen. So we look at the Prophet ﷺ, as you said, the Prophet ﷺ was a leader. The Prophet ﷺ participated in wars. The Prophet ﷺ took life. Whether people like it or not, whether it's politically correct or not, we're talking here academically. Today, this discussion is academic. It's not what people might want to label as. So these are, it's like saying Alexander the Great, right? He didn't offer flowers. I mean, people study his life, and universities are so happy and so proud of that type of heritage. And we know that he, took many lives, right? And no one has a problem with that. But when it comes to the Prophet or Islam, somehow there's always this problem. People get all sensitive and funny. The funny bone gets hit and hurt.
Yeah.
So
I think it's, just to digress slightly on that point, I think that the reason why there is this ideal of a prophet, that he is non-violent or that he never is involved in that kind of thing, I think it's to do with Isa alayhi salam. I think it's to do with the Christian idea of Jesus as the ideal prophet, right? Or the ideal messenger, or whatever it is.
But that's
you don't think so?
That's a misconception. It's wrong because, for example, in the gospel, so Jesus went in the market and he threw over the tables and he made a whip and he whipped people. Okay. He whipped them. Like imagine the Prince of Peace coming and, the Prophet have never done that. Like he wouldn't just go into the market and start throwing tables. I don't have a problem with Jesus doing that. I'm like, super, man. Like he had a reason, He was upset. Right, but again,
if Superman can do it, if Batman can do it, if Spider-Man can do it, like what's the deal here? Like what are we saying? Subhanallah.
So I'm cool. I'm not gonna give you other examples from the Bible. It's just people. The Christians are selected in this whole peace thing. So anyway, so the Prophet ﷺ was a man of action, but at the same time was a even when I talk to, there's a difference between violence and being strong, right? And fighting and having conflict. I like to call it conflict. Yeah. Violence is usually uncontrolled and it's like, something that, right? So he was a man of conflict, no doubt about it. He didn't shy away from it. And the Prophet ﷺ was also, I would say, a passionate man. I don't want to say he was emotional. He was passionate. He was passionate about Allah. He was passionate about his ummah. He was passionate about his family. He had feelings, passion, right?
He had feelings.
Yes.
He had feelings.
Something that we don't see a lot of passion today, right? And so, no doubt he loved his family, loved his wives. He cried, and we have hadith about the Prophet's beard being wet and tears coming down his face, right? When Ibrahim, his son, passed away, he cried. And this is something amazing. You have to understand. He was happy, for example, when Ja'far returned from the Hijrah, from Abyssinia. And he said, and even though they just conquered Khaybar, he said, I don't know which one I'm most happy about, seeing Ja'far coming back. And he hugged them, you know what I mean? So you can imagine like how beautiful it was. And, the genuine personality that the Sahaba, when you read some of the hadith, you're like, is this an exaggeration, right? But it's not like that Sahabi who kissed the Prophet's belly, right? Because he thought that's the last thing he's going to do. And he kind of like, would he really do that? But if you really study the seerah of the Prophet and understand what he gave these people, right? What he brought to them, where they were ready to sacrifice their lives. And these are no people that were just like, do that, These are tribal, tough people, right? Who were coming, like they would have to have a specific allegiance. And here they are ready to sacrifice for the Prophet competing and being close to him. So, a rational person would wonder, like, wait a second, a genuine person, is something that's felt. There's an attraction. There's something healthy going on. While a liar and a person is trying to get benefit, they're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be influencing people to that level. Now, someone might say, well, what about these cults and these? Look, with all due respect, when you analyze these cults and you see what they're talking about, you cannot compare it to the life of the Prophet. You cannot, you don't have the amount of detail and time spent. Like, look at how much we know. We know how many white hairs he had in his beard, what kind of thobe he had. His wife tells us everything about his house life, about all the intimate aspects, to that point, right? An insincere person wouldn't be able to slip through this scrutiny. It just wouldn't be able to happen. It wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So the Prophet ﷺ, he cried. He was passionate. So all those brothers who think that being a man is just beating yourself in the chest and like, you know, fighting, that's not correct. And all those people think that being strong and assertive is something wrong, then they're also wrong, right? So again, we look at the Prophet ﷺ, he had this amazing balance. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when defining the khuluq of the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. And azim here is pretty much the highest rank or the highest example of morals and behavior. And interesting enough, this sifa or this definition or this adjective is used for the Quran. Allah describes the Quran al-Azim, and he describes the khuluq of the Prophet as Azim, right? Subhanallah. So that's what I have to say about that.
It's funny, subhanAllah, that you mentioned, you know, the idea of sort of men being strong or powerful, etc. And, you know, I think if I'm going to keep it 100, and I think we spoke about this in a previous conversation, where it's almost like, certainly, so, you know, the circles that I was in, you had good Muslim men and bad Muslim men, right? Okay. And a good Muslim man, he does all the fara'id, right? He's practicing, but he's soft, and he lets you do what you want, basically. He doesn't give you a hard time about things. He doesn't ask you where you're going every minute of the day. He doesn't try to control your movements or make you do stuff that you don't want to do. You know, he never tells you off. He never puts you in your place. He's a nice guy, right? And he does all the fara'id. We like him. Then there's the bad Muslim man who also does all the fara'id, but he's stern, he's demanding, he has standards, and he expects you to rise to those standards. He wants things done a particular way. He has opinions about you and what you wear and who you speak to and where you go, right? And it's interesting to me how it's almost like as women, and again, guys, feel free to come for me in the comments if you think that I'm talking out of pocket, but I think that there is an aspect of us as women that wants the nice side of masculinity, or should I say the easy side of masculinity, the side of masculinity that makes our lives easier, the provision, okay, the protection, but not too much protection, okay, you know, the love, but not too much love, okay, and all of that, and is not comfortable with what comes with that, which is the other side of masculinity, right? Because we can all agree that, you know, if a man is Amir and he takes that role seriously, there will come a time when he's going to say no. There will come a time when he's like, I'm not happy with that. There will come a time when he'll say, no, I don't agree that we do this. We're going to do it this way. And I mean, I don't know whether you've either heard of this kind of conversation amongst sisters or whether you have any view of it, but I'm interested in how even as Muslim women, there's a resistance there to accepting a man in his full masculinity, because it's like, just be easy with it, like be man enough, but not too manly that you kind of, you know, upset my program. What do you think?
Okay, that's interesting. So what I'll start with is I'll say the women test men. Women, they test men. Okay, it's just whether they do it willingly or unwillingly. I think they do it mostly unwillingly. But women test men because women are created differently than men. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that very clearly. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. The man is not like the woman. And they test men to see if they can stand their ground, if they're real men. Okay, a woman, see, if you put the right thing in the right place, everything works. If you put the right thing in the wrong place, doesn't work. All right. So that's the first point. So women will test men to see whether he's got a standard, where he's got certain, you know, ethics, certain directions, whether he can maintain his frame. And a lot of times, this nice guy who prays and does all the fara'id, but he just kind of lets go. To be honest, those marriages are not very happy, according to my experience. It's a theory, and it's a theory based on 20 years of experience in counseling. So I think almost 20 years. I think a lot of those marriages, even if they continue, they're not very happy. Okay, because again, you have two good people maybe, but they're just not in the right position, right? It's like the Ford is playing goalie. Yeah, he can, but not so good. And then the sweeper is playing, like, I don't know, he's serving water on the side of the bench or something. Like, yeah, we're the same team. Yeah, but you're doing the wrong job, right? They're not very happy. The team still works, everyone's okay, whatever. But in the end, it's not the best performance. All right. So that's the first point. The second point is that, there's an either or, it seems, kind of issue. Like, well, I want this, I want this, we want this soft guy who's going to allow us to do this, but he's a nice guy and he provides and whatnot. And then you got the other side who's like, oh, it's this strong man and he's not taking anything and so on. It's not this or that. It has to be a connection between the two. And I think this is the problem. Now, there's a lot I can say about women here, but I think you're questioning here on masculinity. I'm not going to speak that much about women. I don't know if you want to hear that.
We can go into that. We can go into that because I think the audience for this is, it is brothers and sisters. And really the goal of these conversations is to have an open, honest conversation. I really think that, and Allah knows best, but I really think that for many years, especially in the West, sisters have been having conversations in their own silos. We've been talking to each other and reinforcing each other's views and viewpoints and centering our own experience in that narrative, right? And then wherever possible, brothers maybe have been speaking, but it's like we're not hearing each other, right? So the brothers don't get the sisters don't get the brothers, and that's the least of the worries. The worst cases are where the sisters feel that the brothers are the enemy, and where brothers feel that the sisters are just not on the team. You know what I mean? So this is a place, really, it's a safe space to have that conversation. So Bismillah.
All right. So let me address then the ladies first, but not from my perspective necessarily. So I've had a lot of discussions such as this with some female professionals, counselors, psychologists, and with my, let's say, family members, okay, who are female. Some very, very honest discussions and trying to match theory and studies and research to actual practice and the reality on the ground. And it was very, I think I can consider myself blessed to have those discussions, to be able to get the insight from very honest sisters, okay, practicing sisters, we're very honest. And I know people can say like, man, why you talk like this, and how did you have all stuff for Allah? How can you talk? Like, I don't want to give you the details, but inshallah, all the conversations were professional and halal. But I'll tell you what these ladies said, these sisters said about women. Okay, they said, number one, as I said, that we will test you. Okay, number two, they said, if you're not holding your frame and you're not strong enough as a man, we will dominate you. And we will push you, and it's normal. If you don't push, you're gonna get pushed, and we don't even know that it's happening, and we will go through, but we're not gonna be happy, because by fitra we want, sorry to use the word, but we want to be led, and it might be a short-term satisfaction that's somehow fueled by the feminist movement, where women should be out there, they should be leaders. You can do everything that a man does, or anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you, right? That type of mentality. But they say there's a certain age where we realize that, wait a second, what the heck did I just do? Because I thought I'm happy. Maybe I was on a high, it's like you're kind of on this roller coaster and like, wow, your adrenaline is pumping. Wow, all these things are, but then you end up, on the horizontal line, and you just stop and you're like, is that it? Right? So they said basically, we want to be led. And if you don't know how to lead us, then we will be very sad. And we're gonna regret what's happened. But a lot of them just say, well, now it's too late. I'm already in this relationship. And by the way, that's turning around a lot. There's a lot of khula that's happening now. A lot of women are divorcing their husbands.
Yeah, I
There's
know.
certain communities. I don't want to name them because people are going to get upset again. But there's huge problems where the women are like reaching, and they're like, when you talk to them, like, but wait a second, how did it happen in your 20s? They're like, well, I was this out there. We were happy. We're wearing the same color, doing the same things. Today, I was talking to a brother. And he's like, I taught my wife everything I knew. Right? He's like, to the point there was no difference between us, and that's what broke us. He said that's what. There's no polarity.
This is the word, the polarity word. Yes, yes.
And lo and behold, they are divorced now, and both are very. But he said it became that I was like, it's like I'm married to myself,
right?
And she's like she's married to herself. There's no
or a roommate or something,
exactly.
Something like this.
So women say like, look, you guys have to be careful. You have to keep your frame, even if we push it, if we test it, you got to push back. And then I'm going to make an important statement there in a second. And then they said that, if we're not led, if we're not, sorry, even like to an extent, maybe the word is, a bit harsh, but dominated, it's not attractive for us. And it's not something that we'll respect in a man. We'll test you, we'll push you, but you need to stand your frame and you need to impose yourself. But at the same time, the problem on the men's side is that when a lot of men impose themselves, they're not fair. Okay, and women get that. So, for example, a guy is going to say, "Well, I'm a man. You're supposed to do this," but he's not doing his part. You understand what I'm saying, right?
This is the big mushkila. This is the big mushkila.
But this is the different. This is a different part, right? Like I'm talking about. So the soft guy who allows his wife to do whatever. Okay, she's testing him. She's wearing tight things, whatever. She's going out. It's girls' night out. The guy doesn't care. Have fun, honey. You want me to drop you off? This and that, whatnot. He's got no ghira whatsoever. He just lets her do. She leads whatever she wants to do. She's okay for the first. He's the weak guy, the nice guy, but in the end, she's not going to be happy with him. On the other side, you got the assertive guy who says, "I'm the man. Allah has put me as the imam and whatnot." That's all good, no doubt about it. And a woman is willing to submit to that. All right. She is willing to. It's in her fitra. It's attractive even.
Yeah.
The problem comes is when he's not fair. Like he's demanding that part, but he's not providing the other side. Yeah. So he's all talk, right? He's a lot of talk, a lot of like claims. But when it comes to like, well, do you provide the safety? Do you provide, let's say even just the charisma and the behavior? Like a woman needs to be, a woman loves to be treated nicely.
Yeah.
I always ask the brothers, I'm like, bro, do you, like, for example, the very simple thing, do you open the door for your wife when she gets in the car? Most guys don't do that.
No game, basically. No game.
The women, people are like, oh, that's so chauvinistic, so typical. I don't need anyone to open the door for me. No. Wait a second. Women love that. They love it when their husbands like treat them nice and, like treat them like kind and you do things for them. You please them. A lot of guys don't. Right. And here, what I mean is like literally to do your job as a man and all that. So they don't take care of their appearance. A lot of the guys slack off after they get married. They want their wives to be like super nice looking. They complain when she's not good looking, whatnot. And then he's like, sadly, right, he let himself go. But he's the man, right? So I think that's the problem.
Can I just jump in there to put this into the conversation? I think that is one of the trigger points for a lot of sisters. I think whenever we have a conversation about husbands, even being a wife, taking care of your husband, respecting the husband, obeying or submission or anything like that, the immediate idea that is triggered is men who want everything their way, but do not take care of their responsibilities. So they don't take care of things on their end, but they expect everything else to be according to what they want. To the point where it's almost, there is a block there. It's like, don't talk to me about the husband's rights. Don't talk to me about XYZ, because in my head, all I can reference is men not actually being men, right? Men not stepping up to the plate, whether it was her father, whether she's seen it with her brothers, whether she was married to somebody like that. And I do think that even this whole conversation about, women wanting a manly man, right? When you were talking about, women sort of wanting the soft guy and all that kind of thing, I think maybe at a certain point in your life, when all you're thinking about is, kind of the look and feel of things, you may want all of that. But definitely once you have children, I think it shifts. And I think it's when you have children and you're living that chapter of your life, or the thing you want most in the world is for a man to take charge and just tell you, babe, I've got this. And I know so many sisters who have wanted that, have longed for that, but for whatever reason have never felt safe enough with their husband to let him take care of the finances, let him take care of the vision for the family, let him take care of the tarbiyah. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Well, look, again, I don't think it has to start when you have children. I think that's the problem, right? People think that, okay, once I become a father, I'm going to be this perfect man. No, it needs to be start from when they're boys. Sure.
Agreed.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
The fathers have to train their boys. Education is not conducive to build men today. It's not. Look at education, look at curriculums. It's all against it. So you don't expect the guy to live his whole life as a weak man and then all of a sudden wake up when he has children. So it has to be starting. The man has to learn, has to be educated. Our imams, our scholars, our teachers, our fathers have to educate boys because they're the ones who have been endowed with this responsibility. Yeah. Okay, being an imam and a leader, a khalifa, it's a responsibility given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's something that you're accountable to and by. All right. So that's very important. When it comes to having children and so on, then the level of responsibility becomes, I always say, look, you're never going to be a real man till you become a husband. And you're never going to be a real man to become a father. And you're never going to be a real man till you reach 40. Okay. That's like kind of like the last step. Okay. Right. But you have to have all, like, it's not like, okay, I'm never married and I reach 40, it's still 40-year-old boys,
Yeah.
Right. So these are some of the things that we have to consider. But I think going back to the standard, though, right, the Quran and Sunnah, because I don't want people to misunderstand this here. When a man does his job, and it's not me saying what his job is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what his job is. He's strong, he's assertive, he takes lead, and he respects his wife as well. He loves her. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And then he has that frame and that charisma. She feels safe with him. I mean, imagine you walk on the street with your husband, right? Like, do sisters feel safe? Do they feel safe, like they're going to take care of them? Like they feel like, man, I'm walking with a real man, or they're like, I'm going to have to defend them or something like that, right? If something happens. So when you have a real man like that who's praying, okay, he's not, waking up at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., right? And missing Fajr and stuff like that, right? He takes care of himself. He does his duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He takes care of things. He can solve problems. He takes initiative. He's got a certain limit that even she knows within the very early stage of marriage. She knows that he's got a frame that he's not going to go outside of. Okay, she's tested it and she's comfortable knowing, even if he pushed back, even if there was some conflict and some argument, it's healthy because the female understands, whoa, this is my husband. I know his limits. And they find that attractive. They're like, man, this guy is like, he's not easy to sway. I can trust him. I know that he's going to be able to take care of things. It's not me now trying to gain female followers. Sorry, because maybe some people are saying, oh man, this guy's talking about guys being like, if you look through my videos, I talk a lot about these things, right? And I'm not saying that I'm at like the best. My journey has been to try to do this, and I'm not there yet. I'm still moving towards that. And it's not going to be like a threshold that you're going to reach. You're going to go up and down, you're going to oscillate. It's like kind of like Iman, It's an ongoing process. But what I'm trying to say is that when you have that man who's fulfilling his duties according to what Allah has revealed, if a woman doesn't submit to him, then there's a problem because she has no excuse. And I tell guys, when you don't do your part, then she has an excuse. And that's what women say, but he didn't do this, but he didn't do that. He expects me to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but he didn't even do one thing. All right. Men want this from their wife and that from their wife. And men don't even know if their wives are like happy with them or feel intimate or anything like that. A lot of men have no clue about this. And I asked the guy straight up, one of the first things I asked him, how's your relationship? How's your intimate relationship? And they're like, well, I don't know. I guess it's good. I'm like, you don't know? No, I'm telling you. You know, I thought it's good. You know, I mean, it's good for me, right? Kind of thing, right? And I'm like, look, man,
it's good for me, so it's good. Okay, that's it. That's the end of the conversation.
And a lot of people are like, why are you talking about this? Because this is the main connection in a marriage. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. The love is the first thing, and making love is the event that creates life. If you think about it, subhanallah, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that. So if you don't take care of this department, so I would say number one, a woman wants safety. She wants love, i.e., intimacy, emotions, and so on. She wants strength. Okay, she wants assertiveness, she wants protection, she wants provision. Okay, these are just 6 things that if you look to the Quran and Sunnah, this is what defines qawwam, and there's many other things, right? So if a man doesn't do that, then she has an excuse. She's going to say, well, I'm not doing this because of this. Now, the problem is, if a man fulfills all those things and the woman is not willing to submit and she's competing with him, then we have a problem. And there are a lot of these problems where now the woman has no excuse, right? She can't say that, no, he's not good and he is good. And there's still a lot of good men out there who fulfill all these duties. And sadly, their wives are continuing to test them. And this is another phenomenon. And there's a whole, different drive behind it. Feminism and new age, feminist and new age women and, being so-called the woke and whatnot. And that's a problem because you have no excuse to obey a husband who's doing his duty. You have no excuse whatsoever, right? And we find a lot of that. So we have a few different elements in this equation. Not everything is just black and white. There's a lot of nuances that need to be addressed because not everything is just this or that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely not anymore. And I mean, would you agree? I mean, I've spoken about this on podcasts before, but I think that, being a Gen Xer, I'm in my 40s, so I grew up with, I guess, the beginnings of the education into feminist ideas.
Right.
I certainly considered myself a feminist before Islam. I've been observing the feminist movement from the outside all this time. And I think the way that our society has developed is that masculine traits are prized, right? Because masculine traits drive progress. They drive the economy. They drive knowledge. They drive, progress and development and all of these things, right? And they make money. They generate wealth. They generate capital. And so if you look at the situation in most parts of the world where, before the 1950s, if you like, most women did not produce money, right? They were at home looking after homes, looking after children. Maybe they were farming or something like that. And it depends, of course, on the class, because in some classes, women have always worked in fields and been involved in the means of production. However, if we look at sort of Western society, women, did not go out and produce wealth. They may have been consumers, but they didn't produce. So now we have a situation where through our education and through our conditioning, we are all now meant to be part of the money-making machine. We are all supposed to spend on our education, invest in getting degrees, getting careers so that we can acquire, right? So we can acquire homes, cars, shoes, clothes, holidays abroad, whatever the case may be. So I would argue that with those masculine qualities that are prized, we as women have been raised to prize our own masculinity, right? Our own masculine traits of competition, of pushing, of making things happen, of ambition, and, the things that you were saying, being strong, being outspoken, etc. So as a result, our femininity has suffered because femininity is not prized. not real femininity. Of course, commoditized femininity is, so the physical of the woman, obviously it's a commodity, it can be exploited, and that's great. Some of the traits of femininity that work well in the system, they are encouraged. But as for the homemaking, the being a wife, the raising of children, the being a mother, the prioritizing of family, not to mention, feminine traits such as submissiveness, gentleness, humility, sacrifice, whatever, we've always seen from women throughout time. These are not highly prized, right? So we could argue that women are being pushed to be more masculine, and at the same time, men are being encouraged to become more feminine. So it's like a feminization of men and a masculinization of women, right? But then it begs the question, well, why can't that work? Why can't we have masculine women and feminine men? Like, why is that not working for society today? What do you think?
Right. It's like putting Windows on a Mac, right? It's never going to work well.
Right.
You know what I mean, it's just not built for it. It could power up. It can do certain things, no doubt. Yeah, you have parallel desktop or whatever they call it. But in the end, it's not going to work because you're not going to get the best out of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us in specific ways. He's also given us our gender roles, what we do, what we shouldn't do, and so on. And that's just the way He Himself, subhanahu wa ta'ala, has created us. And He knows exactly how we can work at the optimal level to produce the best. And the problem is that the 21st century or postmodern era is encouraging this competition as opposed to cooperation between men and women, between husband and wife, between the gender. It's like, no, you're better. No, you're better. You're better. You're better. And there's no ta'awun. There's no cooperation. We're a family. Men are men. Women are women. That's just the way it is, right? Men are the leaders. Women are the supporters. That's just the way Allah has decided. Be the best at what you've been assigned to be. Okay? Do that. Allah encourages competition, but compete within your field and within your league, right? And I'll tell you one thing. Real men are not attractive to masculine females. They're just not at all. Okay? A real man, there's always going to be this polarity. And you notice it. Even in gay couples, you always have the feminine and the masculine. Even in lesbians, you got the butch and you got the feminine one. You'll find some things that deviate from this rules maybe, but in general, you have to have that polarity. Even in that, you will have someone who has to play. Even if they switch the roles, in the end, there has to be one here and one there. Okay, you cannot violate this law. It's just almost impossible. So the problem is, as you said, right, these masculine traits that women are trying to go for, yet they're claiming to be feminist. But you're not. You're masculine. You are trying to be a man. Why would you want to be a man? Honestly, I don't understand. Right? Why do you want to be a man? There's no point for you to be a man. There's nothing attractive in a woman acting or being like a man. Not at all.
In answer to your question, about who would want to be a man, I think that we have a particular view of what it means to be a man. And that is, to be a man is to be in control, is to have power, right? And many women today want control, and they like the idea of having power, right? And I remember Jordan Peterson talking about this, where he was saying how, let me try and get my ideas straight. It's our society has characterized masculine history as the history of the victors, the male victors, right? The kings, the leaders, the warrior princes and all of this, right? The elites, the wealthy, the people who were always on top in society. We're all men, pretty much. And we've equated their experience with masculinity, with men. This is how men lived, right? Men have always had power, influence, etc. And he makes the point that no, only a few men had that. The rest of everybody else was in the trenches, working hard to feed their families. That's it. No grand adventures, no wonderful exploits, no exciting trips here, there, like, we talk about the travelers, for example, the explorers. who, you know, went out and explored the world. And we've got women here saying, you know, but women didn't have the opportunity to do that because women were stuck at home, etc. And it's like the explorers were a tiny minority that actually went out to do any of that stuff. The rest of everybody else, we were literally in the trenches, men and women doing their roles, trying to survive. Right. So anyway, I think that's the reason why when even a sister, if you were to sit a sister down who maybe may say things like what you're saying, and you actually write down, any brother can do this, anyone who's watching this can do this, write down everything that you have to do as a man, as the job description, and sister, give it to the sister and say, is this what you want? So praying in the masjid, all the prayers, fasting all the time, paying for your whole families, you know, everything, and being completely responsible for everybody in the house, let alone dealing with the job market, dealing with your boss, dealing with, you know, the society at large, politically, socially, etc. You know, just all the things that men go through. And you would present that to somebody. I don't know how many people would actually sign up. That's what I think about that.
So. No doubt. That's a good point. You made a good point. Women wanting power. I think there's been a push on that. Of course, if you can see even in the discourse of our ummah right now, women are encouraged to seek more and more leadership positions. Some people are offering extreme incentives for women to step up to the game. Who wouldn't want to, right? To be paid more and to do these things in many Muslim countries, including. The problem is, I hope people don't misunderstand here and don't get me wrong. It's just that women have not been created for that role, you know. And can they do it? They can attempt to. Can they successfully do it? Maybe here and there. Is that the standard? No, it's not. Okay, and it's not because I'm talking. Maybe people are going to get upset. People have tried to give different evidences as to where women were in roles of leadership. You know, these are exceptions. In general, it's always been men. Allah sent men prophets. It's not because, oh, wow, I'm so proud. It's because this is how Allah created them to be able to handle this.
It's just
a fact, right?
It's just facts.
So Bilqis is leading her nation, and Sulaiman comes, right? And she has to submit because she cannot resist his power and his strength. You know what I mean? It's just impossible. And she does submit, and she does convert. And how does she? Does he like give her like, oh, you know, your book is wrong, my book is right, and do dawah? He overpowers her. He shows her what real might and strength from Allah. Why do we say wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah? You know what I mean? That's what it is right there, right? And she thinks she's had it all, and then she sees this man who's a prophet, you know, who's got that strength. What does he say? He said, I will like come and just take over everything. He says it very clear, you know what I mean? You know, they try to send him a gift and whatnot, right? And he's like, I don't need your gift. I'm coming, you know what I mean? And that's the way it is. So, you know, when you look through the history of Islam, through the history of mankind, Allah has created men for a certain role, women for a certain role. Excel in what Allah has created. You'll be more happy. You'll have leadership in there, as the Prophet said, right? Everyone is a shepherd. So the man is a shepherd of his family in the community. What's wrong with being a shepherd to your children and to the house? Like, why? You know, I think this is a problem. They've tried to convince women to say that you're losing out, you're missing out, right? You've been assigned this job, this amazing job of nurturing human souls, which is just amazing, right? It's like nurturing human souls. And some women have said, I don't want that. That's horrible. Yeah, why would I want to do that? This is not fair. My husband is out there. He's having fun. I want to be out there. I want to go to the office. I want to put a suit on. I want to achieve this and this and this. But subhanAllah, you can achieve so much. No one said you can't be educated. No one said you cannot achieve certain things. It's where the priorities are and how you achieve certain things. What are you going to do? What are going to be your circumstances? And again, we see that to have achievement, a lot of women, Muslim women, will have to disobey Allah. I mean, it's just the way it is. You can tell me, no, this is a difference of opinion. Most women who are trying to achieve like this amazing success and, you know, be whatever, you find that there's
compromises to be made. There's compromises to be made. And this is the thing, is that what, as you were saying, nothing comes for free, right? There's always a price to pay. So I'm thinking of those couples who, you know, and I want to say by choice, but I want the listeners and the viewers to hear what I'm saying when I say by choice, because most of us do not make our choices in a vacuum. Our choices not only come from us and our own perspective and our own experience and what we've learned and how we've been shaped, but also from our environment, right? So things that we consider necessary in our society, in other countries or other societies, are considered absolute luxuries, right? But for us, it's necessary, right? So for example, in our home, we must have 2 cars, right? Why must we have 2 cars? Because that's our standard. That's what all the neighbors have. That's what I'm used to, etc., etc. So of course, there's always a price to pay. Maybe in your case, the price that you pay for a particular house or having 2 cars or being able to go on holiday every year is that your wife has to work. All right. No harm, no foul. It's your choice. However, what's the price you're paying for that? And it's something we all need to, and I'm going to say this to inshallah, hopefully to share with you, Brother Gabriel, to get your opinion on this. But it's also something I really want my viewers to pay attention to. And that is, we've lost a generation of Muslims, okay, to chasing the dunya in the West. And I believe that because many of our parents, when they came as immigrants, they came for a better life, right? They came to better their situation. They didn't come for deen. They came to have a better situation for dunya, hopefully for their children to do better than they did, for them to be able to offer them what their parents couldn't offer them. Again, the best of intentions. But for most of our parents, their focus was achievement in the dunya. Right. A better education, better money, a better suburb, marry from a better family, and all of this. It's all dunya, guys. Let's just call it what it is, right? So what was the price that was paid for that? Because for sure there is always a price to pay. And I think we can see that we've lost an entire generation of Muslims because parents' main focus was dunya and doing well in the West, doing well in the UK, doing well in Canada, doing well in the US or whatever, and getting out of the ghetto, getting out of, kind of those silos and getting out and doing well in society. And subhanAllah, when you hear the sisters who, my heart bleeds when I think of those sisters who, they believed what they were told. It's school, then your university, then masters if you can, and get a good career. They believed what they were told by school, by their parents a lot of the time, okay, by their community, the pressure that was put on them to make sure that they achieve and have high grades and get into the best university and do all of that. Then they find themselves on the other side of all of that. Maybe they are beautiful, they're in shape, they have a great job, they may even have their own property, etc., but they can't find a husband. And their childbearing years are behind them. Their peak years are behind them. And these sisters, what has anyone got to say for these sisters? Let alone the ones who did get married and have got no wifely skills whatsoever, because the mother never bothered to prepare her to be a wife because she's always talking about her education and her career and getting, and getting ahead. And so what I'm saying to anyone who's listening to this and watching this is, whatever choices you're making in your family, just be aware that you're always paying a price. So if the price for your lifestyle is that both parents have to work, what is the price you're paying when it comes to your children? When it comes to your little ones going into nursery school early, when it comes to your children being in state school, period, being in school, okay? Because anybody knows me, you know how I feel about that, okay? But putting your kids into government schools, into state schools, I don't know what they call them in the States. What do they call them?
Public schools.
Public school, right? Putting your kids into public school, babysitters, childminders, childcare, kids being latchkey kids and coming home on their own. No parent who's actually focusing on them, and both parents just focused on work, focused on building their careers, focused on achieving their own goals. Guys, this is not something to play with. So the reason I'm saying this is that the next generation is counting on us to do better. and to have a more balanced view of what is really important and be prepared to make the sacrifices for that. That's my opinion on that.
No doubt, no doubt. I agree with that 100%. Sadly, our parents are projecting their dreams onto us, maybe their failed dreams. They got married early. They were convinced that it was a mistake, again, through media and through that movement that started at that time. And now they're saying, no, my daughter, you have to be independent. You have to have a career, because your husband, he might leave you, by the way, you know, so you 100%. Can't depend on it. So imagine you are raised with that fear already and that mindset that I need to, because he might leave you. What do you mean he might leave you? Why do you want to start like that? What the default is that, oh, you got to be ready because he's going to leave you, right? So that's the mindset, the groundwork is already laid negatively. What do you think is going to happen from the relationship? Do you think it's going to work out? It's not going to work out.
No,
that's why more than 50% of our ummah right now, the Muslim ummah, are divorcing. People are divorcing.
Check this. This is the thing, is that, you know, the short-sightedness of it is this. And you know, on this platform, I've, you know, invited my guests to be very open. I've also been very open. The thing is that as a woman today, the reality is you don't need a man to survive. We know this, right? And if you're in the West, you don't need a man to survive. You can have the government give you a house. The government can give you money for food. You can live by yourself. You know, it's safe for you to kind of go out and do your thing and do all of this. So the trick here is that you believe that you can do better on your own. And
what a sad life.
It's awful. It actually is awful, but we never hear about that. What we hear about is how bloody hard it is to be in a marriage. We don't talk about how hard it is to be single, be a single mother, to be out there on your own. Trust me when I say, any sister who's right now married and is in an okay marriage, that's my baseline, is it's decent.
Okay.
It's decent. Sis, that's all it needs to be. That's all it needs to be, trust me. For it to be worth saving, it just needs to be decent, because no one talks about the other side of the divorce. What we do is we celebrate the sister being brave enough to do X, Y, Z, you know. And the thing is, I've been in this situation before, okay? Because at the end of the day, if you were in a difficult situation that in your head was untenable, when you get out of that situation, you have this sense of relief, right? You have this sense of, I can breathe, you know, now I can breathe. Now my kids and I can do this and this and this. Alhamdulillah, I'm free of him, you know, and you can now live your life, right? And I'm not discounting that for many women, there is that sense of relief, because guess what? Working on a marriage is hard work. And if you don't have to do that work anymore, it does feel like a relief. However, if you speak to many sisters 1, 2, 3 years afterwards, especially if they have teenage children, and especially if they've been trying to get married again, you will hear a very, very different side of that coin. And the side of that coin is that it's damn hard, you know? And like I said, people glamorize it and they romanticize it as if now you're free. You're not free. You just have a different type of slavery. You just have a different type of work on your hands, but now you're on your own. Now you are all by yourself. And now, to be honest, you're at the mercy of the elements, because if you don't have a family or a father who says to you, come home, right? Come back to your family, which to be fair, most of us don't have that. Certainly in the West, I don't think we do. But if you don't have that, people, women, sisters, we discount the value of having a man in your life because we think we can do better on our own. And we think that it's much easier to not have to negotiate, you know, the temper or the opinions or the will of a man. Just do it on your own, you know, just do it on your own, right? But I think for many sisters, and guys, you can put in the comments what you think, but I think for many sisters, they realize that, you know what, actually, there were things that man brought to our family that I did not realize at the time. I didn't value those things. I didn't see those things. I didn't consider them to be important. But now, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, I see the impact of no longer having that masculine presence in the house, no longer having that structure, no longer having the waliship of a man and the protection of a man. I see the results now. And my message to sisters is like, think so carefully, because you may think that the divorce is like freeing you. Trust me, it's the Wild West out there. Anyway, that's what I have to say on this topic.
No doubt, no doubt. But let me put a quick spin on this. Look, if you have a man and a woman who marry very late, who've been conditioned by their environment, who've been individual and living an individualistic lifestyle, and all of a sudden, at the age of 30, that's the average marriage age for Muslims these days, they're finally coming together. Okay, so let's say from the age of puberty, when you start understanding what is desire, you feel that you want to be with someone, and things get they become different. So let's say by the age of 11 or so. So you're basically about 19 years living alone. It's all about you, and all of a sudden you're told you have to share things and share life with another person. It takes you about 5, 6, 7 maybe years to get used to that, to now doing things in a different way. But in that time, maybe you're already divorced because you're not able to recognize that what you felt irritated by, that difference, like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do things this way? I'm used to 19 years, I was doing it this way. Now he wants me to do it this way, right? That's one of the problems. And by the time you already get accustomed to, and you realize, wait a second, my God, actually, that was just the male perspective. It was the male presence. This is how life should be like. I was very selfish. I was very individualistic, but it's too late. It's too late. You know what I mean? So that's one of the problems. We don't encourage our children to marry early. They're not able to adapt to that relationship. When they're young, it's much easier. Yeah. Their psychology is not as strict. They're not as formed as when they're 30. Right. So a lot of marriages fail because of that. And yes, indeed, as you said, by the time the divorce is on the table, they realize, like, wait a second, maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it's not as romantic as I thought it would be. And I'm free, and all these commercials and all these happy coaches and divorce coaches and telling you that you can live your life in a successful way. You just have to self-love and self-care and just focus on yourself. What does that mean? Just focus on yourself. This is the deen of cooperation and of taking care of each other. Yeah, you have to take care of yourself, no doubt about it. But it's not just like, okay, just you, right? It's about actually sacrifice, for the other person. And that's the concept of ithar, وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ, right? And they prefer you over themselves. I mean, that's what parents do, right? The mother sacrifices herself for the children and for her husband, and the husband sacrifices himself for his wife and for his children, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? So
I have to say a word for my divorce coach friends, Malish. I've got lots of them. But I think what we see now is coping mechanisms, and they're needed. I'm going to be frank, because those sisters that I spoke about, who are lovely sisters, practicing, trying their best in their 30s, 40s, never married, never had children, they have to find a way of coping, right? They have to find a way of understanding their situation in a way that doesn't lead them to hopelessness, doesn't lead them to depression, doesn't lead them to be angry with Allah or anything like that. So I get where that focus is. I understand it, but I think that it's a mistake for those voices to become the dominant voices within the Muslim community. This is the issue. This is the issue. This is the problem, really, because it means that the conversation or the narrative, and this is an interesting point actually, because it's almost like the narrative of women who have either not fulfilled the traditional Islamic ideals or have tried to fulfill them but have failed for whatever reason. That narrative dominates the space, right? So you don't have wives talking about marriage. You have divorcees talking about marriage, right? You don't have, married women talking about men. You've got single women talking about men, and it changes the dynamic. It changes it.
No doubt. Well, look, I think I maybe you see the point of their coping. I don't see it, and I'll tell you why I don't see it. Because the problem is with these sisters is that they've made marriage as the ultimate thing. It's the goal. It's the end. All right. And they were disappointed. And guess what? This dunya is going to disappoint you. And men are just part of dunya. Okay. And same for men towards women. Right? If that's your highest objective in life, and I'm talking to sister right now, if the men and having husband and family and children and maybe a nice picket fence and a holiday once a year and all that you see on social media, everyone snapping their coffee and their salad and whatnot, and on some island, and you want that, and you're angry that your husband cannot provide that. If that's your objective, then you're going to be disappointed. Human beings are going to disappoint you, even if it's your hobby, right? And you look at the Sahabiyat. Okay, let's take that example, right? They divorced. If you look and you study the fiqh and you study the Seerah, the women divorced. Some of their husbands passed away, and like for example, one of the Sahabiyat, they married some of the great Sahabas, and she didn't just say like, I'm just going to be a widow, and she continued her life because her highest objective was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Yeah. Sadly, some women worship their husbands today, and some men worship their wives. And because of that, when that's removed from the equation, it can be removed through divorce or through that person passing away due to a terminal illness or some, and then their whole dunya collapses. Okay, and this is due to, and I know people don't like this, they call it the religious card or something like that, but it's not, malish, it's like literally, it's an indication of iman, a problem in iman. And I'm not going to say this one or that one, but it's an indication, because again, if your source of happiness is removed, and now you are basically, of course, you're allowed to be sad, you're allowed to mourn, the Prophet ﷺ himself did that. We have Am al-Huzn, the year of sadness. Okay, he was extremely sad when Khadija passed away. He was extremely sad when Abu Talib passed away. But don't mix sadness with desperation, as you said, being with Allah and having some coping mechanism that is incorrect and misguiding other sisters and trying to follow the same path that it's somehow easier and better for them to leave their husbands because you found happiness and they're going to find happiness as well.
Right. I see what you're saying. So it's almost like, are you saying then that, because I think we're conflating two things here. I think many traditional societies do teach women that their ultimate goal is to be married, right? And we could argue that we want women to think of marriage as important, otherwise they will not go for it, right?
I'm not saying that it is an ultimate goal. I'm talking about is your husband
right?
Is it
the peak? Is it the peak?
Right. And I'm not talking about in serving him and being kind to him, because that's part of the ibadah. That's your fard.
Yeah.
Right. But who are you obeying by doing that? You're obeying your husband, but you're obeying Allah's order.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So if Allah removes that,
sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think we might be saying the same thing, but I think that the coping mechanism, which is that, and I think what I see sisters doing who are genuine is, you may have had all these hopes for this marriage and for the family that you wanted, right? And so when I see divorce coaches working with divorcees who are dealing with a lot of stigma and pain and guilt already, right? Because of, the way that divorce is seen. And I understand why it's seen that way, because I actually don't think that it's healthy for us as Muslims to remove stigma completely. Because if we remove stigma completely as a society, there will be no shame, right? There will be nothing that's like off, out of bounds, and we can't have that. However, I digress. My point is, I think the issue is not so much sisters who are widowed or being, have been divorced, whether it was they asked for it or they were divorced by their husband, trying to find meaning in their lives now that they are no longer wives. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is that their narrative seems to be almost dominating the narrative amongst Muslim women who by and large are not divorcees and are by and large kind of not in that situation. So like I said, you've got divorcees talking about marriage and you've got single women talking about Muslim men as if like they've got this, you know what I'm saying? When really it should be wives talking about marriage and married women talking about men. I think this is what that's what I think.
It's like a broke man trying to teach people how to make money. You know, I don't think you're going to take any lessons from that person. We need successful women to speak to divorced women, to teach them how to take things back and start working towards. Why give up? Why be satisfied with this failure? It is a failure, and it's not just her failure. Maybe he has more share in that failure. But the whole relationship failed. But does that mean that you're just going to give into that? No, you need someone who's worked it out, who has a successful track record and say, look, I understand what you're going through,
right? But
I'm not going to tell you, well, just come on my side and be divorced. You need to get back in there in the game and start, because that's what Allah wants you to be. Allah wants for you afafa, and Allah wants for you to build a family. And even if you have to start again 2, 3, 4, 5 times, well, guess what? Some sahabiyat were married 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's a befitting note to end this conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought we covered a lot of ground, a lot of very interesting ground. I had a ton more questions, guys, but we have to wrap it up for today. Maybe Brother Gabriel will come back and join us on a Sunday night live stream. Inshallah. Brother Gabriel, where can people find you online, inshallah? And what do you want them to find you for? Very importantly.
Okay, well, you can find me on Instagram or on YouTube. Just type Gabriel Romaani. And you can find me for positive Islamic psychology. You can find me for masculinity, what men want, stuff like that.
Jazakallah kullu khair. Thank you so much for joining me. And guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, put your comment below, and I think they say click on the notification bell to get notified when we have a new video, because there's lots more where this came from. I just want to thank you for rocking with us, guys. Please do share this video far and wide, and let's get things going in the comments below. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.